Welcome back to Speak and Feel English, the place where we learn to sound natural, confident, and expressive in everyday conversations. Today, we are exploring 3 powerful words that learners often confuse, but native speakers use constantly: either, neither, and rather. These words may look small, but they carry subtle meaning that shapes how we agree, disagree, or express preferences. Ethan, why do you think these words matter so much in conversation?
They matter because conversation is not only about grammar, it is about choices, opinions, and relationships. Words like either help us express options smoothly. For example, if someone asks me whether I prefer tea or coffee, I can say either is fine. That response shows flexibility and politeness, which is essential in social communication.
Exactly. And learners often think either simply means one of two, but it actually performs several roles. It can express choice, agreement, or possibility. Consider the sentence, "You can sit either here or near the window." In this case, either introduces 2 alternatives without implying preference. It keeps the tone neutral and cooperative.
Another interesting use appears in negative statements. When we say, "I don't like loud music and my sister doesn't like it either," the word either replaces the need to repeat the whole idea. It acts as a connector, showing shared agreement in a negative context. Without it, the sentence would feel repetitive and less natural.
That is a great point. Many learners mistakenly use to instead of either in negative sentences. They might say, "I don't like it too," which sounds unnatural. In English, to belongs to positive agreement, while either fits negative agreement. That distinction is subtle but important for sounding fluent. Let me illustrate this with a short dialogue. Imagine someone says, "I cannot attend the meeting tomorrow." If I respond, "I cannot attend either," I immediately signal that we share the same situation. The conversation feels efficient, supportive, and connected. Yes, and another useful pattern is either or, which helps us present structured choices. For instance, we can either finish this project tonight or continue tomorrow morning. This structure emphasizes that only one option will be chosen, guiding the listener toward decision-making.
I like how that structure makes speech sound organized. It shows that the speaker has considered alternatives. In professional contexts, this clarity is especially helpful because it avoids confusion and keeps discussions focused.
There is also a pronunciation note worth mentioning. When used as an adverb at the end of a sentence, either often receives light stress, almost blending into the sentence rhythm. However, when used in the structure either or, it may carry stronger emphasis because it signals contrast.
That rhythm matters. Conversation is musical in a way, and word stress helps listeners follow meaning. When we say either we leave now or we miss the train, the word either prepares the listener for 2 alternatives and sets up anticipation.
Now that we have explored how either opens the door to possibilities, let us turn to neither, which does the opposite. Instead of suggesting options, neither closes them. It tells us that none of the presented choices apply.
Right, and that makes neither very powerful in expressing refusal or shared negativity. If someone asks, "Do you prefer working early or late?" and I answer, "Neither suits me," I am clearly stating that both options fail to match my preference.
One fascinating thing about neither is that it often appears with the structure neither nor. For example, she is neither tired nor distracted. This structure balances 2 negative qualities while keeping the sentence elegant and symmetrical.
That symmetry is important because it prevents awkward repetition. Instead of saying, "She is not tired and she is not distracted," we compress the idea into a smoother form. This makes our speech sound more professional and deliberate.
Another key use appears in short responses. If someone says, "I did not enjoy the film," we can respond, "Neither did I." This structure might seem tricky because it involves inversion, but it is extremely common in conversation.
Exactly, and the inversion actually adds emphasis. By saying "neither did I," we highlight shared experience. It feels more expressive than simply saying "I did not either," even though both are grammatically possible.
Learners sometimes confuse neither with none, but there is a difference. Neither refers specifically to 2 options, while none can refer to more than 2. That small distinction helps listeners understand the scale of the statement.
Let me give a conversational example. Suppose two colleagues discuss lunch plans. One says, I do not want pizza and I do not want burgers. The other might respond, neither sounds appealing to me. That reply shows alignment and keeps the conversation moving forward.
Yes, and notice how polite that response feels. Words like neither soften disagreement because they express preference rather than criticism. Instead of rejecting someone's suggestion directly, we simply indicate that the options do not match our needs.
That politeness is crucial in professional environments. Clear but gentle language maintains relationships while still conveying honest opinions.
So if either invites options, neither eliminates them. Together, they form a pair that helps speakers navigate agreement and disagreement gracefully.
And now we can move toward a different kind of expression, because the word rather does not simply choose or reject options. It reveals preference and attitude.
Let us turn to the word rather, which introduces something more subtle, personal inclination. Unlike the other two, rather does not simply deal with logical choices. It communicates emotional preference and reflective judgment. Ethan, how would you describe its role in everyday conversation?
I would say rather allows speakers to express decisions without sounding abrupt. If I say, I want to leave, the statement is direct and possibly abrupt. But if I say, I would rather leave now, it softens the tone and suggests thoughtful consideration. It signals that I am responding to circumstances, not issuing a demand.
Exactly. And that nuance makes rather extremely valuable in professional communication. For instance, imagine a team discussion where someone proposes extending a meeting late into the evening. A colleague might respond, I would rather continue this discussion tomorrow morning so that we can think more clearly. The response is polite, constructive, and focused on productivity rather than personal convenience.
That is a great example because it shows how rather can frame a preference as a logical improvement rather than a refusal. It shifts the focus from emotion to reasoning. This is why you often hear it in diplomatic conversations, academic discussions, and leadership communication.
Another important structure is would rather than. This pattern highlights contrast between two actions. For example, I would rather invest time in preparation than rush into a decision. Here, the speaker presents not just a choice, but a philosophy about decision-making.
Yes, and that structure often signals maturity. It implies that the speaker values long-term outcomes over short-term convenience. In conversation, such phrasing makes the speaker sound measured and responsible.
There is also a conversational use where rather functions as a mild intensifier. When someone says, that explanation was rather helpful, the speaker is not exaggerating, yet still conveying appreciation. It is more refined than saying very helpful, which can sometimes sound overly enthusiastic in formal settings.
I like that observation because it shows how rather influences tone. It allows us to add emphasis while maintaining composure. This is especially useful in discussions where balance and restraint are valued.
We should also mention how rather appears in reflective storytelling. For instance, a speaker might say, the experience was rather challenging at first, but it taught me patience. This use conveys thoughtful hindsight rather than immediate reaction.
That reflective quality makes conversation sound more intellectual. It signals that the speaker is evaluating experiences instead of merely reporting them.
Now let us bring these three words together in realistic conversational scenarios, because language truly comes alive when structures interact. Imagine two colleagues discussing how to present a project update. One might say, we can either present the summary today or wait until the data is finalized.
The other might respond, neither option feels completely satisfactory at the moment. I would rather gather one more set of results before presenting. In that single reply, the speaker rejects both proposals while introducing a constructive alternative. This demonstrates how the three words help guide conversation toward resolution instead of conflict.
Exactly. And this pattern appears in everyday decision-making as well. Suppose two friends are planning their weekend. One suggests, we could either go shopping or watch a film. The other replies, honestly, neither sounds appealing today. I would rather spend time outdoors. The response redirects the conversation smoothly without dismissing the friend's suggestions harshly.
That redirection is important.
Conversations succeed when speakers acknowledge ideas while still expressing their own perspective. Words like these help us balance agreement and individuality.
Another scenario might involve problem solving. A manager might say, "We can either reduce the timeline or increase the budget." An employee could answer, "Neither solution addresses the root issue. I would rather redesign the process itself." Notice how the reply sounds analytical rather than resistant.
Yes, and that analytical tone creates credibility. Instead of sounding negative, the speaker sounds strategic. This is the power of structured language. It frames disagreement as insight.
We should also talk about rhythm. When used together, these words create a conversational flow. Either introduces options, neither rejects them, and rather proposes direction. This sequence mirrors how humans naturally think: consider, evaluate, decide.
That is a fascinating observation because it shows how grammar reflects cognition. When we speak, we are not just forming sentences, we are modeling our thought process for the listener.
And when that thought process is clear, conversations become more productive. People understand not only what we think, but how we arrived at that conclusion.
This clarity is especially valuable in collaborative environments where decisions affect multiple people. Structured language prevents misunderstanding and keeps discussions efficient.
So mastering these 3 words is less about memorizing rules and more about learning how to guide conversations logically and politely.
Exactly. Fluency emerges when grammar supports intention, and these words are excellent tools for that purpose.
As we wrap up today's discussion, let us reflect on what we have learned. The word either helps us present alternatives and express agreement in negative statements. It keeps conversations flexible and open to possibility.
The word neither, on the other hand, allows us to reject options gracefully. It communicates clarity without sounding confrontational, which is essential for respectful dialogue.
And rather gives us the ability to express preference with thoughtfulness and diplomacy. It helps us present decisions as reflections rather than reactions.
When combined, these 3 words create a complete conversational toolkit. They allow us to introduce choices, evaluate them, and express our own direction with confidence and politeness.
What makes them powerful is not their complexity, but their subtlety. Each word shapes tone, and tone shapes relationships. That is why mastering small words often has a larger impact than learning complicated vocabulary.
Exactly. Language is not only about correctness, it is about connection. The more precisely we choose our words, the more effectively we communicate our ideas and values.
So as you practice speaking, try incorporating these words into everyday conversations. Notice how they help you sound more deliberate, more thoughtful, and more natural.
Over time, they will become part of your instinctive speech, and that is when true fluency begins.
Thank you for joining us for this discussion.
And if you enjoyed this episode and want more conversations that help you speak clearly and confidently, be sure to subscribe and explore all the podcast episodes on the channel.